Hello, everyone. Welcome to Small Biz Tips. Guys, I have a big surprise for you today. This gentleman was so impressive. I was like, I got to get him on this podcast. He has an amazing background. Oh, man, I'm excited. Alex, what's going on, man?
Not a whole lot. Just excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again for jumping in. Really appreciate you coming in today. So, before we even get into the podcast interview, who is Alex? Let's start there.
Who is Alex? Wow. Well, today, a little different than maybe a decade or so ago. Historically, if you rewind back to early 2000s, 2006, 2007, I was an infantry Marine serving in Fallujah, Iraq, and
Wow.
coming home, started to make that transition. So it started by just gradually transitioning back into the real world, if you will. And I got into insurance actually. And so my first little venture in the business world
Yeah.
was really the insurance industry. And so I dove in because I really didn't have a whole heck of a lot planned out.
Mm.
And I'm very thankful that someone gave me an opportunity and saw something in myself that I didn't quite see in myself just yet. So had success in the insurance industry, have opened up several agencies, got into
Nice.
real estate, started doing the real estate thing. That's going well. And then more recently, got into opening my own recruiting service, which has been something pretty special over the last 12 months. Have grown that significantly, and it's helping a lot of small business owners, and it's been a ton of fun. And so I've been doing a lot of speaking, professional speaking, coaching, consulting. I've published 2 books now. One
Congrats.
is my military experiences in business kind of together, and then most recently a book specifically on recruiting, small business, big recruiting is the title.
I love it. I love it. So I want to go way back, right? Before you even were in the military, you went to college, you played football as well?
I did. I played football for Ferris State University up in northern
Right.
Michigan.
That's awesome. You still in Michigan, right?
Yes.
All right, good. You For some reason, guys in Michigan, you guys love football, and are you a Michigan State fan too?
Yeah, I'm a Michigan State fan. Yeah, so I played football up at Ferris, which is a Division II school. I grew up
Yeah,
just right near East Lansing, Michigan State's campus, and so I'm a big Spartan fan. And
that's
so
awesome.
we're having a tough year with football,
Uh,
but it
but
happens.
guess what? You guys gonna get through it. So, thank you again for serving in the military. I think that's amazing. I too came from an insurance background. Before I started my company 9 years ago, I used to be an underwriter for a PNC company. So I'm familiar with that space. I want to dive into that space a little bit because you were able to not just have one agency, you built several, right?
Correct.
Tell us more about that. Like what happened when you became an agent? What was the mindset? Oh, I can start my own agency. Oh, I can have a second one. When did you make that shift? Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that's looking to grow, and sometimes there's that mindset that kind of hold them back. So I'm curious to hear what was your mindset through that process?
Yeah, well, for me, and this is probably the same for a lot of different small businesses and industries. I know my early years, I viewed myself as like the best salesperson on the team. And I
Yeah,
probably was at that time, right? And so I couldn't let some things go. I was having a little hard time like empowering people,
trusting.
yeah, outsourcing some things, and I was trying to be like everything to everybody. And I see small business owners making that mistake all the time. And it was
Mhm.
probably after my second or third year as an agent with one location, I started comparing myself that was doing really well by most standards to some of the men and women that were just doing like next level things in
Yeah.
the industry. And I was asking myself, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing differently? Am I not good enough? Am I not working hard enough? And I didn't think either one of those two things were accurate. But what I realized is that what I was doing, what they were doing, were completely different, right? Like
Huh.
I was the guy. I was a salesperson. I wasn't a
Yeah.
business owner yet. I had a really good job that I was good at, but I was yet to be a business owner. And I was driving home when that just hit me. I still remember that drive. And I thought to myself, maybe I could hire more people, not just a support team around
Mm.
me, but like insurance salespeople and train them and coach them and mentor them to do what I do. And instead of having one of me, maybe they can have one, two, three, four, or five of me.
Mm.
But I know my holdup initially was like, man, I'm really good, right? And can I get
Yeah.
someone to be a clone of myself? But what I found is that as business owners, we don't have to do that, right? So if you're 100% of you, you don't need to go find 3, 4, or 5, 100% of you. You can find 80, 85% of
Yeah,
you and get 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And what's more impactful for your community in your business? One of you at 100% or 3, 4, or 5 at
at
85%,
80%.
especially when the
Wow.
competition's down at like 50, 60%, right? Like
Yeah,
you know, the competition's down here, the barrier to entry to some of our businesses are relatively low. So I made that realization, and now I have, and quite frankly, there's some folks on my team that are every bit of 100% of me, maybe 110 or 20. But I didn't wait to find that 100% of me to pull the trigger on a hire. I started aggressively recruiting, interviewing, hiring, empowering, and my agency took it. I mean, that's what took it to the next level with
nice.
just production and growth that gave me the revenue and the confidence to go out and replicate that a second and now third time. And I've taken that into other industries as well. And so that was it for me.
I think it's amazing that once you made that, that shift, you took action right away, right? A lot of people will make the shift and they'll start planning and they'll do this and they do that, but they don't take that action that you took. So I commend you for that. Now, the other piece you said is they don't have to be 100%. So 85 to 80% is still good. Now, my other thing now I'm still wondering is, okay, boom, you went and get 3 now agencies running, plus you have other businesses. How do you manage all this? Do you have specific people running each one of these? Or how does that work in your world?
Yeah. So as I started to grow, I think it's important as we start to see our revenue increase, we need to make sure we allocate those funds in a way that's not just self-serving in the short term, right? Like Uncle Sam's
Like
going to want a
that.
piece, right? Uncle Sam's going to want a piece of cash.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the way it is. You should probably, pay yourself some extra too, right? Enjoy the fruits of your labor. You don't
Yeah.
want to just work yourself to death and never enjoy what you've worked hard for. But then you need to make sure you're taking a healthy percentage of that and investing back into the business. And I've always realized that because my background was fairly humble beginnings. I didn't have money. And so when I started making money, I didn't think like, oh my gosh, I need this money. I thought, well, what could I do with this to help long
Mm,
term continuously grow? And so I've always put some back in. And so the revenue goes up, I add team. As I add team, I add more organizational structure and roles. And so when I think back to my military days, I was
yeah.
in the Marine Corps, and by the time I got out of out of the Marines, I was a squad leader. As a squad leader, you're in charge of 12 other Marines. And so one might think like, well, that's a lot of Marines. That's a lot of folks to
Yeah.
like know what's
Yeah.
going on and try to like maneuver and move around and tell it to do or whatever. But I didn't have to, right? Because we had 3 fire teams. And within those fire teams, I had 3 fire team leaders, a fire team
Mm,
leader in each team. And so when I needed to roll something out, whatever it was, I would go to my 3 fire team leaders, and then they would go to their 3 fire team members. And that decentralized command organizational structure allows you to do that. The military has done it for hundreds of years, and that's what I've done within my agencies and other businesses. Is I will start to build that structure out to where, like on my recruiting team, I have a team of about 90, and on the insurance side of things, probably around 25. And so you're talking about 100 plus people, but I don't
yeah.
have to go to 100 plus humans on a daily basis to make sure they're doing what they need to do because I've empowered people and built that structure out.
Wow. I like how you didn't, start with the mindset that, hey, I'm just gonna go and build it out. You slowly build it out as you grow, right? And you realize there is always opportunity to tweak what you're doing to make it better. Which takes me to my next questions, right? You have those agencies and then you went into real estate. So when did that happen? Like, did you always had, okay, I wanted to get into real estate, or when did the shift happen in that?
Yeah, you know what? I kind of had an idea that I wanted to get into real estate. My grandfather has owned some real estate, and for him, he was a small business owner way back when, and he knew like up in Michigan, you either worked for GM or one of the other major
Yeah.
car companies, and he didn't work for GM, so he wasn't going to have that pension that everybody else was going to have. And so he had a small business that was kind of a supplier to General Motors. And so he decided he would start doing some things as far as building and buying some properties to get some revenue coming in. So when one day he
Passive
retired, he had
income.
something. So in my mind, I knew I always needed to do something because as a small business owner myself, I knew I wasn't going to have that pension and everything else. And so I started like keeping that option on the table, but I really didn't do anything with it until I had a realtor friend of mine
Mhm.
just mentioned casually how she picked up a couple of rental properties, and she started talking to me about the positive cash flow and those things. And I already been thinking about how I can start to diversify my revenue streams a little bit. I didn't know what that next thing was. And she mentioned that to me, and it was the first time it dawned on me that maybe that could be something that could be a revenue stream more immediate, not necessarily just
Yeah.
for retirement. And so I honestly I Googled like business like real estate books, and I bought the first two that came through. Read them both. Like
Which book was that though? I'm
the first
curious.
one was if you know Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets,
Yes,
there's
big
a
fan.
podcast and yeah, a lot of books. It was honestly his first real estate book. I think it was just like the book on real estate or something very simple. That was
Yes.
the one that really like I connected with because I think his writing style and mine are very similar. It's just it's not overly complicated, right? Like it kind of breaks down
Very
like this is
simple.
how you run the
Boom,
numbers.
boom.
And I read it, read another one, like this makes sense. Started looking at properties and started purchasing properties. And but from that point on, I probably read like 50 to 70 real estate books in that first 2 years, just because okay, if I'm gonna take this thing seriously, I'm gonna invest some time into this whole thing and make sure I do it right. And so that's what I've done with insurance and sales and real estate and speaking and writing is I won't just wing it. Like I'll get
Yeah.
excited about something, do a little homework on it, and then take action.
But you take action, but still keep educating yourself, right? Because you read like 50 plus books as you acquire more, or you doing multifamily, single family.
Mostly
What is some
multifamily. I have some single
nice?
family, a few commercial properties, but
All in
yeah, I
Michigan?
mean, what's that?
All in Michigan
All in
or
Michigan, all in Michigan right now. But you're right. I mean, you can educate yourself to death, right? You
yeah.
could read and listen and pray and do everything, but if you never take action, like the best education I've ever gotten was from taking action, right? So
Ooh.
the education helps, but taking action, you're gonna that learning curve is drastic when you jump in.
I like that the fact that not only you went and take action, but you actually Google some books that you like and that you connect with, which takes me to my next questions, right? You have a couple books that you publish, and congrats on that.
Thank you.
The first one that's around complacency, and then the second one that you have that's around your current company that you build out. So can you tell us a bit more about, when that first book came out? Like what made you say, hey, I'm gonna write a book, right? And then to tell us more about that. And then we're gonna come to the second one in a second. But I'm really curious what triggered you to say, hey, now it's time to write a book. Because a lot of people wants to write books, but they don't
Mhm.
take that step, right? Like I'm about to publish my second one very soon. So
Awesome.
I know, I know what it takes to do that. So I'm curious, what triggered you to say, okay, now it's the time to do this.
Yeah, so I started writing probably back in 2017. As far as I knew I wanted to write a book, I didn't really know what I wanted to write about. And I think at that
Mhm.
time, I was like, well, I'm just going to write a book for everybody, right? I have all this stuff to say. Everybody's going to want to listen and read this thing. And then as I started speaking more and more, and
Yeah.
what I started to focus on is what are they asking me to speak on? What am I
Mm,
being asked to speak on consistently? And it dawned on me like, you hear people talk about, and I truly believe this, you should go an inch wide and a mile deep, not the reverse. And I believe that when it comes to anything, whether the content you're
yeah.
delivering, the business that you're running, all that fun stuff, because you can't be great at everything, and you can't do something that's going to impress everybody or be valuable to everybody. And so I started to kind of narrow the focus into small business owners because that's who I spoke to. That was where I was. That was what I
Yeah.
knew. That's what I'm passionate about. And so it was probably like 2019 when I started doing more and more speaking, and the message became more and more clear as I spoke on the topic of complacency. And I started, I guess, being a little more intentional with my writing. And then COVID hit, right?
Mm.
And I had some extra time on my hands. I wasn't traveling and speaking and doing those things. I was doing a little bit of virtual at the time, but at first I thought this thing was going to blow over. I'm not going to do virtual. Well, that didn't blow over,
That
and so
didn't
I said,
happen.
yeah, but I really started to get aggressively like writing and blogging and doing those things. And I didn't tell anybody that I wrote my first book until I had it released. I don't know about you, but the first time, like I'm probably the worst marketer of myself, especially back then. I think we all have that imposter syndrome to some degree. And so the first book I did it,
Mm.
and then I shared it with the world. The next one I was a little more like confident and excited about. I'm not saying either one is better than the other. I just because I'd already done that.
Yeah.
it was, I was more comfortable saying, hey, this is what's happening. Let's get
Well,
excited around it. So yeah, that's why I did it. I had a message and I wanted to get it in front of more people. I can't just speak, to
yeah,
the masses, but if someone wants to hear more and I can't deliver that message to them, there's a book for them. It also allows you as a speaker to really hone in your message. And
mhm,
I know when I first started speaking, it's like you try to cram everything into 60 minutes and it's just too much,
it's
right? But
impossible. I
when you have
agree.
that book, you can really narrow your focus to like your best stuff that 90% of the audience plus is probably going to appreciate. And then for the 20 or 30% that wants more, well, there's a book now. And so I
Yeah.
don't feel like I have to cram everything in there. And the same thing goes with my recruiting message. Now that I have that, I can give them the best that I got and then say, hey, if you like that and you want more, like, here you go.
Let's talk about that, right? Small business, big recruiting, right? How to hire in any labor market, within any budget. That caught my attention because right now we all know what's going on. It's crazy out there. People, it's hard for business owners to hire. And you came up with something that every business owners can use. So tell us about that book, right? Tell us what came that says, hey, I'm gonna focus on writing a book around recruiting and also starting a business around that too.
Sure.
So tell us about both.
Yeah, sure. So it started with the speaking again. This was pre-pandemic, by the way. People think that this whole recruiting, this talent war, this issue that we're facing, that it's like this new thing. It's not a new thing. This thing's been going
Mhm.
on and on and on, and it's not going to stop, right? So before COVID even hit, I remember taking 3 calls in the same day by
Yeah.
different insurance agents that were asking me for help with recruiting. Just, hey, what are you doing? What's working? And I thought to myself, man, this is a pain point. Like I'm getting this much, this many questions on this topic. And so I thought I would create a presentation and I would start speaking a
Mhm.
little bit on it. And then that started to take off. And the more I started to speak on it, at first, when I started to speak on the topic, I assumed that everybody loved to do it. Like I just thought they needed help. And so I would just like, I would share my message and then they'd be like, oh yeah, cool. Like I'm going to go do that now. And so I just assumed everybody likes recruiting. Like I like recruiting. And then it dawned on me one day because actually it was over several days. I had a
Mhm.
handful of agents say, I would rather just like what you say is great, but I'd rather just pay somebody to do it. I'd rather outsource it. And so this is how the business started because I
Mm.
looked out into the world and thought, what can I refer them to?
Yeah.
A business owner that they can afford that will do this for them. And quite frankly, I couldn't find anything. There's a lot of really great services, headhunters, and a whole bunch of
Yeah.
other companies that I do refer people to if it's the better fit, because it's like a quick shot in the arm, right? Like you need something now. This is going to get you that. Go pay a. It's not cheap, but
No,
go
it's
pay the
not.
money. But what I wanted to do is find someone that would consistently allow them to outsource those daily activities that drive results in this space of recruiting for them indefinitely. And I couldn't find it, so I created it. I hired my first recruiter, assigned her some business owners to recruit for. She does it every single day. She recruits for more than one, of course. And then it just started to take off. And now we serve over 1,000 small business owners across the country and have a team
Jeez.
of about 90 all within that first year. But the book now kind of like a mix between both of those things, right? There's people that
Yeah.
they get it, they want to take action, but they need more, right? And they need it. So, and that's where this book comes into play. So it gives them everything that I would typically speak on, and then just a
Mhm.
heck of a lot more. And so, as a small business owner, if you do want to own that piece of the business still and not outsource it, how can I help them also? Because the service, well, quite frankly, the service right now isn't built out to take on every single industry and every single company.
Yeah.
Eventually, that's my dream and hope. But right now, for those that say, you know what, I'm struggling and I want to recruit better and more
Yeah.
consistently, this is going to give them what they need to take action. And that's, to me, that's the biggest pain point that small business owners have. If you think about anything, whether it's production, sales, retention, team, you can tie all of those things back to recruiting
People.
ultimately.
That's it.
And so if we can fix that thing, man, it's going to be powerful for a lot of men and women across the country that are struggling right now financially.
I'm curious, right? Because you didn't just build, a recruiting business. You scale it really quickly in about a year, right? 90 different recruiters, thousands of business owners, or you focus on a specific niche, like insurance agents? Is that kind of like the niche for the recruiting, and then the book can be used for every other businesses? Because that's pretty impressive to do that in a year and still running other businesses and have real estate.
Yeah, so right now it is strictly for insurance,
Mhm.
and even specifically to one carrier, one company right now. What we
Mm.
hope to do by the end of Q4 is start to pilot this service in the food industry, and
Oh,
then from there, hopefully grow it in that food industry. I love food, right? That's part of it,
me
and I
too,
know that
man. I'm a
you walk
foodie.
into restaurants and they can't seat people because they don't have the staff, or they're closed on certain days because they have to give their waiters and waitresses and cooks a break. I want to eat, so I want to help them out first. And then from there, I'll start to hopefully get into the point where you can go to the website, watch the demo video, book a quick call with my sales team, and then have a conversation around your business and how we can or can't help you. So, but right now it's not quite there yet. So it's gotten really big based off of one industry and one company within that industry, which is really exciting because I think the sky's the limit for this thing. But you're right, the book right now is very much so that I didn't write it as an insurance agent recruiter. I
Yeah,
wrote it as if like, okay, if I'm a small business owner, regardless of the
yeah,
industry, is this something I can and should read? That's the target audience, and that's what I try to write it as. So
I
I
love
think
it.
that we accomplished that with that book.
So, how do people get it? Because I already know my audience. They're like, okay, he got a book. It's around recruiting. How do they get access to it? Right? I mean, do they go to your website? Where can they get their copy?
So right now, the new book, the paperback copy, is on Amazon. So if you just go to Amazon, put in small business, big recruiting, that's where you're going to find that book. It's on Kindle, it's paperback. Complacency Kills. This one here, it's on Kindle on Amazon, but the
Mm-hmm.
physical copy is right now only on my website, which is alexshattuck.com.
Spell it
And
out
then,
for us.
and I think you can also find it at autopilotrecruiting.com, those two websites.
Okay. Got it. So Autopilot Recruiting, Amazon, and then Alex Shattuck, SHATTUCK.com.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yep.
Fantastic. All right. So to wrap things up, man, because you gave so many good gems, what is that one small tip you would share with any business owners who may be struggling with recruiting right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I always tell people, like, if you take one thing away from me when it comes to recruiting, because that's what it's going to be about, right? The one thing is specific to recruiting, is if you fix that, everything in life gets better. I promise you.
Mhm.
But the one thing about recruiting, if you remember nothing else, it's consistency, right? It's
Mm,
consistency. I always tell small business owners, just like food, right? If you go to the grocery store only when you're hungry, you make really bad decisions and it gets extremely expensive.
I
Right? We've
know.
all done that. We've all done that. And the same thing goes when it comes to interviewing and recruiting. If you only recruit when you have a couple chairs to fill, you
Mhm.
start to get a little desperate, you make bad decisions, and it gets extremely expensive. But if you're just consistent, a little bit every day, a little bit every day, indefinitely, you're not going to have those issues. And because of that, you're going to be staffed, maybe plus one in staff. Maybe you'll have
Yeah.
a bench ready to go. You'll be in a position of strength so you can actually hold your team accountable and coach them and do the things that you need and want to do, which is going to drive
Yes.
more revenue to your business, of course. That's why it's important to consistently recruit. So that's my number one tip, is obviously it's
Love it.
recruiting, but more importantly, consistent recruiting every single day, forever.
Wow. So what I'm hearing is build a pipeline, not just a sales or lead pipeline, but of a talent pipeline by
Exactly.
consistently adding to it.
And it's the same
Guys,
process. The same
that's
process.
it. I love it. This is fantastic. Alex, thank you so much for jumping on and sharing those amazing gems. How do people get in touch with you if they want you to speak, or, in addition to the book, they want to connect with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, if you want to book anything as far as keynote speaking goes, alexshattuck.com. You can
Mhm.
fill out a contact form. You can find me on basically most social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all under Alex Shattuck. And that's probably the best route. Thank you.
Guys, he's the man, right? From military to real estate investor to serial entrepreneur. Definitely hit up Alex. This guy is killing it, especially in recruiting. We all need it. So definitely reach out to him. Thank you for jumping on, Alex. This was amazing. Have a good one.
Thank you.